The night had a strange stillness, the kind that made every small sound feel louder than it should. The rain drummed lightly against the window, steady and calm, but inside Emily's heart, there was nothing calm about the silence. She sat at the edge of her bed, holding an old photograph of her family, herself, Daniel, and their son Ethan, all smiling in a sunlit park years ago. That smile had faded long before Daniel packed his bags and walked out the door 6 months ago. Now all that remained was the echo of arguments, the sound of closing doors, and a house that felt far too big for two people learning to live with heartbreak. Emily had grown used to the quiet, but not the loneliness. Every evening, she would tell herself that she was fine, that she had to be strong for Ethan, but strength didn't fill the empty chair at dinner, or the gap in the hallway where laughter used to live. Her son had changed too. Once open and cheerful, he had become distant, speaking only when necessary. Most nights, she'd hear his door close and the muffled sound of his music, and she knew he was hiding his hurt the same way she was, silently. The clock ticked past midnight. Emily sighed and brushed a tear off her cheek. She told herself it was just the rain making her emotional. She stood planning to make tea when she heard soft footsteps outside her door. She froze. They stopped right outside. Then came a gentle knock. "Mom," her heart jumped. It was Ethan's voice, quiet, uncertain, almost trembling. It had been weeks since he'd called her that. Usually she only got short answers. Yeah, fine, or whatever. That one word, Mom felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Come in," she whispered, quickly wiping her eyes. The door opened slowly, and there he was, tall for his age, his brown hair messy, eyes tired from too many sleepless nights. He was wearing his old gray hoodie, the one she'd bought him for his 13th birthday. It was too small now, but he still wore it like it made him feel safe. He didn't come in right away. He just stood in the doorway, looking like he was trying to find the right words, but couldn't. Emily waited, afraid that if she spoke too soon, he'd retreat again. "I can't sleep," he finally said. His voice cracked a little. "I keep thinking about stuff." She nodded softly. "You want to talk about it?" He hesitated, then stepped inside and sat down on the floor beside her bed, leaning against the wall. "I don't know. It's weird. Everything's weird lately." Emily sat down beside him. The room was dim, lit only by the lamp on her nightstand. The golden light made the rain on the window sparkle like tiny stars. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She could feel how heavy his silence was, like a storm trapped in his chest. He looked up at her finally, his eyes red, but not from tears, from holding them back. "I think I'm mad at the wrong person, Mom." Those words hit her like a wave. She didn't speak. She was scared too. "I thought it was your fault," he continued. "When Dad left, I thought maybe you didn't try hard enough to make him stay." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to say something to defend herself, but he kept talking, his voice trembling. "I used to hear you two fight, and I hated it. I thought if you just said sorry first, maybe he'd stop being angry. But now, I don't know. I remember how tired you looked all the time. You didn't yell, you just stopped smiling." He looked down at his hands. "I blamed you because it was easier than blaming him." Tears filled Emily's eyes, but she didn't want him to see. Her son, her quiet, guarded boy, was finally letting the pain out, and she couldn't ruin that moment with her own. "I guess I was scared you'd leave too," Ethan whispered. "So I tried to act like I didn't care. But I do. I really do." Emily's hand trembled as she reached for him. "Oh, honey," she said softly. "I was never going to leave. Not ever." He leaned against her, his head resting on her arm. It was the first time he had let her hold him in months. She felt his heart pounding fast, like it had been waiting for this moment to be heard, to be loved again. They sat there quietly. The only sound was the rain. Emily stroked his hair gently, remembering when he used to fall asleep on her lap after story time. That little boy was still there somewhere, hidden under the hurt. "I miss him," Ethan said suddenly. "Dad, I know," she replied. "I miss him too. But missing someone doesn't mean we can't move forward." Ethan looked up at her, his eyes searching hers. Do you think he misses us? Emily smiled sadly. Maybe in his own way. People don't always know how to handle their mistakes. Sometimes they walk away because they don't know how to fix what's broken. Ethan nodded slowly. I think I get that. He paused. Mom, I don't want to be angry anymore. Her heart softened completely. Then don't, she whispered. You don't have to be. You just have to be honest. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Mom, for being cold, for not talking. I didn't mean to hurt you. That was the moment she couldn't hold back anymore. She wrapped her arms around him, holding him tight. He didn't resist. He hugged her back, strong, real, like he meant it. Tears finally came, not from sadness this time, but from relief. Months of distance melted in that single embrace. I love you, Ethan, she whispered. I love you too, Mom. They stayed like that for a long time. No more words, no more walls between them. The rain outside had softened to a drizzle, like the world itself was calming down with them. When Ethan finally stood up, he looked lighter, his shoulders not as tense, his face calmer. I think I can sleep now, he said quietly. Emily smiled. Good, you'll feel better in the morning. He nodded and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. Mom, thanks for listening. When the door closed, Emily sat there in silence, her heart full. She looked at the photograph again, the three of them smiling in the sun, and for the first time, she didn't feel pain. She felt hope. That night had started like every other, quiet, lonely, filled with rain and old memories. But it ended with something she hadn't felt in months: connection. Her son had come to her room that night, and what he said had opened a door between them that had been locked for far too long. As she turned off the lamp and lay down, she realized something simple but true. Healing doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes in soft words, a quiet knock, and the courage to listen. That was the night everything began to change. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, painting the room with a soft golden glow. Emily hadn't slept much, but for the first time in months, her heart didn't feel as heavy. The sound of Ethan's footsteps earlier, his words, his hug, they echoed in her mind like a melody she didn't want to forget. The storm that had hung between them for half a year had finally begun to clear. She made breakfast quietly, scrambled eggs, toast, and orange juice, the way Ethan used to like when he was younger. When he came down the stairs, she almost didn't recognize him. His hair was messy, but there was a calmness in his eyes that hadn't been there in so long. Morning, he said. Emily looked up, smiling softly. Good morning. He sat down and took a bite. You didn't have to make breakfast. I wanted to, she replied. It's been a while since we ate together. He nodded slowly. I guess it has. For a few minutes, they just sat in comfortable silence. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was gentle healing. After breakfast, Ethan grabbed his backpack for school. Before walking out, he paused at the door. Mom, he said quietly, last night. Thanks for listening. Her throat tightened. Anytime, sweetheart. When the door closed, Emily stood still for a moment, letting out a deep breath. For the first time, she felt like maybe they were going to be okay. But as the hours passed, she found herself thinking about Daniel, the man she once loved, the man who had walked out of their lives. She tried to push the thoughts away, but memories came anyway. Their laughter, their arguments, their slow distance. She wondered if he ever thought about Ethan, or if guilt kept him silent. That evening, Ethan came home early. He looked restless, pacing the living room. Emily noticed right away. Something on your mind? She asked. He dropped his bag and sat down. I was thinking about what I said last night. About Dad. Emily sat across from him, waiting. I don't hate him, Ethan said, his voice low. I used to think I did, but now, I think I just didn't understand. She leaned forward slightly. Understand what? He hesitated. You both looked unhappy before he left. I saw it, even if you tried to hide it. And I kept thinking, why didn't you fix it? Why didn't he? But maybe some things can't be fixed. Emily nodded slowly. You're right. Sometimes love runs out of ways to heal itself. It doesn't mean it wasn't real. It just means it changed. Ethan's eyes filled with quiet sadness. Did you love him, Mom? Even at the end. The question caught her off guard. She took a deep breath before answering. Yes, I did. I loved him for a long time. But love isn't always enough when respect and understanding fade. We stopped hearing each other, and once that happens, everything starts falling apart. He looked down. I think I get it now. Emily smiled gently. You're growing up, Ethan. That's what growing up does. It makes you see things from both sides. He laughed softly. I'm trying. The conversation paused. Emily could see he still had something left unsaid. His fingers fidgeted with the edge of his sleeve. Mom, he said suddenly, when Dad left, you didn't cry in front of me? Not once. Why? Her heart clenched. Because I didn't want you to think everything was broken, she said. I wanted you to feel safe, even when I didn't. His eyes softened. You must have been so lonely. Emily gave a small, sad smile. Sometimes. But I had you. Even when you stopped talking to me, I still had you. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan moved to sit beside her. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for shutting you out, for not seeing what you were going through. Tears stung her eyes, but her smile stayed. You were hurting too. We both were. The only difference is I'm older, so I knew the storm would pass. You were still learning how to survive it. He looked at her, his voice trembling. You really think it'll pass? Yes, she said softly. Because we're talking now. That's how healing starts, with small words that mean everything. Ethan leaned back on the couch, exhaling deeply. I used to hate coming home. It felt like the house was angry too. But last night it felt different, like the house could breathe again. Emily's heart warmed. Maybe it's because you did the bravest thing anyone can do. You spoke from your heart. He smiled faintly. It wasn't easy. I know, she whispered. But you did it. And I'm proud of you. Ethan hesitated, then asked, Do you think Dad will ever come back? Emily looked toward the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. Maybe not the way you mean, she said. But people come back in small ways. A phone call, a message, a memory that finally stops hurting. Ethan nodded slowly, trying to absorb her words. I wish he'd call. He will, she said gently. When he's ready. Silence filled the room again. But it wasn't empty. It was full of the things they finally understood, the pain, the forgiveness, the love that had never truly left. Later that night, after Ethan went to bed, Emily sat alone by the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the world clean and quiet. She thought about what Ethan said, how he used to feel angry coming home. She remembered those tense dinners, the slammed doors, the tears she cried quietly in the kitchen. But tonight, the house felt different, warmer, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. She picked up her phone and scrolled through old photos. There was one of Daniel and Ethan fishing by the lake, both laughing. She smiled sadly. It was a good memory, one she didn't want to erase anymore. Then she opened her messages. Her thumb hovered over Daniel's name. For a moment she thought of sending him a message, something small, like Ethan's doing better. But she didn't. Not yet. It wasn't time. Instead, she whispered to herself, We're getting there. Just before she turned off the light, she heard a knock. It was Ethan again, peeking through the door. Mom, she smiled. Can't sleep? He shook his head. Just wanted to say goodnight. Her eyes softened. Good night, sweetheart. He lingered a second. Mom, I'm glad we talked. She nodded. Me too. When the door closed, Emily lay back on her bed, tears in her eyes, but a peace in her heart she hadn't felt in years. Her son was healing. So was she. The pieces of their life, once scattered and sharp, were slowly finding their way back together. And deep down she knew this was only the beginning. One conversation had changed everything between them. But somewhere in the quiet corners of her heart, she could feel something else shifting the courage to face the past she'd buried. And the man who had left a space that never truly closed. For now, she whispered to the silence, thank you, Ethan, because it was true. Her son's words that night had opened a door not just to his heart, but to hers as well. The week passed faster than Emily expected. The mornings had begun to feel lighter and the house seemed less heavy, though it was still quiet when Ethan left for school. She moved through her days with a little more ease, but in the back of her mind, Daniel's absence lingered. She hadn't heard from him in months, not a word. And now, after Ethan's honesty the night before, the idea of him returning to their lives even briefly stirred a mix of emotions she wasn't ready to face. Emily was in the kitchen, sipping her tea and staring at the steam curling from the cup. Her mind wandered to memories she had tried to suppress, birthdays missed, arguments that had grown too loud, nights when Ethan and she had held back tears for each other. She wondered if Daniel remembered any of it, or if he had already moved on to a life that didn't include them. Her phone buzzed suddenly, and she jumped slightly. The screen lit up with a name that made her heart race. Daniel. For a moment, she froze, gripping the phone tightly. She debated ignoring it, letting the moment pass, but something in her chest told her to answer. She pressed the green button. "Emily," he said, his voice tentative. "I heard from Ethan. He told me you two talked last night." "Yes," she replied carefully. "We did. He needed to. We both did." There was a pause on the line, a silence heavy with the weight of the past. "I'm glad," Daniel said finally. "I wasn't good at being there when you needed me." Emily didn't know how to respond. Part of her wanted to hang up, to push the past away again. But another part, the part that had softened when she heard Ethan speak honestly, wanted to understand. Wanted closure. He continued, quieter now. "I'm coming by this weekend. To see Ethan, maybe? We could all have dinner, like old times." Her chest tightened. The idea of seeing him, sitting across from him at the table, brought memories she had tried to lock away. But she also knew that Ethan deserved this. He deserved a chance to reconnect, to see both parents, even if the past had been painful. "All right," she said cautiously. "We'll see each other this weekend." After hanging up, Emily sat silently in the kitchen. Her hands trembled slightly, and she looked out the window at the fading sun. The sky was painted orange and pink, beautiful but fleeting. She felt the same way about life now. Everything she had known had changed. And yet moments of beauty still emerged if she looked for them. The following days were a whirlwind of preparation. Emily cleaned the house meticulously, though she knew the effort was more about calming herself than impressing anyone. She thought about what she might say, what Daniel might say, and how she would manage to stay composed for Ethan's sake. Her son had opened a door for honesty and healing, and she could not let fear close it again. When Saturday arrived, Emily prepared dinner with a mix of nerves and cautious hope. She wanted it to feel normal, not forced, not strained. She could hear Ethan in his room, playing his music softly, humming along. The sound made her smile. He was ready. She just hoped she could be. The doorbell rang and her stomach tightened. Emily opened the door to see Daniel standing there, holding a small bouquet of flowers. He looked older, more uncertain, but there was a gentleness in his eyes she hadn't seen in months. "Hi, Emily," he said, voice low. "Hello, Daniel," she replied softly. Stepping aside to let him in, he entered, placing the flowers on the counter, and looked around the living room with a mix of nostalgia and unease. Emily could tell he was trying to remember how it had felt to live here, to be part of this family, but it was clear he had changed. They had all changed. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his eyes lighting up slightly when he saw his father. "Hey, Dad," he said. Daniel smiled faintly. "Hey, buddy." Dinner began quietly, with polite conversation and the clinking of cutlery. The tension was noticeable but not uncomfortable. Emily noticed that Ethan laughed once or twice, and it struck her. The boy who had been closed off was opening again. That alone made her heart swell. After the plates were cleared, Ethan stood up suddenly. "I'll go grab dessert," he said, smiling nervously as he slipped out to the kitchen. Emily and Daniel were left alone at the table. He looked at her, a mixture of regret and admiration in his eyes. "You've done an amazing job with him," he said quietly. "He's growing into a good man. Because of you." Emily's lips curved into a small smile. Thank you, Daniel. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I made a lot of mistakes. But if I could change one thing, it would be how I left. You didn't deserve that. Her fingers brushed the edge of the table, feeling the familiar grooves of the wood. We both made mistakes, she said softly. But maybe this is what we needed. Time apart to see who we really are. Daniel nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Just then, Ethan returned, holding a small cake. He set it down with a proud smile, and Emily noticed the look in his eyes, the look that had haunted her before. It was different now. Calm, gentle, yet full of conviction. I need to tell you both something, he said, standing between them. Emily and Daniel exchanged a glance, waiting. Ethan took a deep breath. I used to wish we'd be a family again. But last night when Mom talked to me, I realized something. Families don't have to look the way they used to. They just need love. And forgiveness. The words hung in the room, soft but heavy with truth. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. But they weren't sad tears. They were the relief of knowing that her son had learned a lesson she had hoped he would. The words hung in the room, soft but heavy with truth. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. But they weren't sad tears. They were the relief of knowing that her son had learned a lesson she had hoped he would. Daniel reached out, not across the table, but into understanding. He's right, he said quietly. We've all made mistakes. But we can start from here. Carefully, slowly, if we want. Emily nodded, feeling something shift deep inside her. For months, she had lived with anger, fear, and sadness. But now, seeing her son and Daniel in this moment, she realized that healing could be gentle, gradual, and honest. Later that night, after Ethan went to bed, Emily stood at her bedroom window. The moon reflected off the wet pavement outside, casting a silver glow across the yard. She thought about the day, about the conversation, about the moments when she had almost felt panic rising in her chest. She whispered softly, "We're starting over, in a way that matters." The knock at the door reminded her of the night when it had all begun, when Ethan had come to her room, and his words had changed everything. That night had opened a door in their hearts, and today had proven that the past didn't have to define the future. Emily realized that love was not just about romantic gestures or dramatic declarations. Sometimes it was quiet, subtle, a hug at the right moment. Words spoken honestly, forgiveness extended without expectation. And as she looked at the moonlit yard, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The past had knocked again, but this time it had been met not with fear, but with hope. Her son had grown, her heart had softened. And the man who had left a void in their lives was now part of the healing process. Emily knew there would be more challenges, more conversations, and perhaps more pain. But for the first time, she felt ready to face it all together, carefully and with love. That night, as Emily finally lay down, she whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." Because she knew it was true. One conversation, one dinner, one honest moment could start a chain reaction. Her family, fractured yet resilient, was beginning to find its rhythm again. And deep down, she understood that this change was just as much about love as it was about courage, the courage to face the past, accept it, and move forward with open hearts. The night was quiet now, but it was alive with possibility. And Emily finally felt she could breathe again. Saturday arrived with sunlight spilling into the house, warm and bright, carrying a sense of hope and cautious excitement. Emily woke early, her stomach fluttering with nerves and anticipation. Today, Daniel was coming for dinner, and while she had prepared herself mentally, she couldn't help the mix of emotions swirling inside her apprehension. Curiosity and a faint lingering trace of old feelings she had buried long ago. Ethan was already up, his usual energy tempered by a quiet grown-up focus. He moved through the kitchen, helping Emily set the table, arranging plates and glasses with care. "I'm glad he's coming," Ethan said softly. I want to try to make things normal." Emily smiled. "Normal is a good place to start," she replied. "We'll take it slow, one step at a time." There was a brief silence, comfortable and unforced. It had been months since Ethan had approached her like this, thoughtful and honest about his feelings. Emily realized how much he had grown, not just in height, but in heart. The doorbell rang, and Emily's heart skipped. Daniel, she smoothed her hair and took a deep breath before opening the door. He was standing there with a small bouquet of flowers in hand, looking uncertain, hesitant, yet somehow hopeful. His eyes softened when he saw Emily. "Hi, Emily," he said quietly. "Hi, Daniel," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. He handed her the flowers, and she accepted them with a small nod. "Thank you." He looked around the living room, taking in the familiar surroundings with a mixture of nostalgia and unease. Emily could see the memories flickering across his face. Laughter. Arguments, small moments of family life he had once been a part of. It was clear he was feeling the weight of the past as much as she was. Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, his expression curious but calm. "Hey, Dad," he said. Daniel's face brightened just slightly. "Hey, buddy." He glanced at Emily, then back at Ethan, as if measuring the moment. "You've grown," he said. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, I guess I have." Dinner began quietly. Conversation flowed slowly at first, polite and careful, but it gradually warmed. Ethan laughed a little, teasing Daniel in a way that reminded Emily of old times. She felt her chest lighten. Her son, who had been distant and guarded, was opening again. After the plates were cleared, Ethan stood up suddenly. "I'll go grab dessert," he said, slipping into the kitchen. Emily and Daniel were left alone at the table. He studied her, his eyes full of unspoken emotions. "You've done an amazing job, Emily," he said quietly. "He's growing into a good man. Because of you." Emily's lips curved into a small, wistful smile. "Thank you, Daniel." He hesitated, carefully choosing his words. "I made a lot of mistakes. I know I hurt both of you. If I could change one thing, it would be how I left. You didn't deserve that." Emily looked down at her hands, brushing them against the table. "We both made mistakes," she said softly. "But maybe this is what we needed. Time apart to see who we really are." Daniel nodded slowly, his gaze steady. "Maybe you're right." At that moment, Ethan returned from the kitchen, carrying a small cake with a shy smile. He set it down between them and looked at both of his parents with quiet confidence. "I need to tell you both something," he said. They waited. Emily felt her heart pound slightly. Ethan took a deep breath. "I used to wish we'd be a family again like before. But last night when Mom talked to me, I realized something important. Families don't need to look like they used to. They just need love and forgiveness." The words hung in the air, soft but weighty, and Emily felt tears prick her eyes. They were not tears of sadness, but of relief and pride. Her son had spoken with honesty and maturity, revealing his heart with courage. Daniel reached out, not across the table, but into understanding. "He's right," he said quietly.